Would the Randy of 2007 be upset with the monster that new Randy has created?
I think there's still a lot of cars that are out there. First of all, I think a lot of people look at BAT and say all the work is done. And I don't think we're even scratching the surface.
Randy Nonnenberg, Mr. Bring a Trailer. How's it going, man?
It's going great. I'm happy to be talking to you.
I'm excited about this. We're right in the middle of producing all of our episodes about how the 911 is overpriced and overhyped. And at this point, I don't know, this is kind of off the cuff, of course, but at this point, everybody's heard my opinions, and we got to the end of episode 3. We're right in the middle of it right now. We're kind of doing things out of order. But what I have told everybody at the end of episode 3 is that I would never sell my car to get any of the cars that I mentioned. Never. I would never sell my 911 for $150,000 and buy a Testarossa. I would never sell it and buy an Espada. I would never sell it and buy a Cosworth, Ford Cosworth RS. I would never sell it and get an Quattro or a 500E or an old Mini. Or there's virtually, for the money, there's no car that I suspect, and a lot of them I haven't driven. I've never driven a Testarossa, but I can close my eyes and imagine myself in one and what it would feel like to get out of one and how cool I would be. But I still like the driving experience that I have with my car is like nothing else I've ever experienced. What are your thoughts on the 911 and where you put it in terms of price? Because I'm sorry, I'm going on and I'm not even letting you talk right now, but hopefully I'm prepping you up for for something good here, because we use Bring a Trailer now as like the benchmark for price. And for the person that's deeply and I'm sure emotionally involved in your company, what are your thoughts on the premise and the topic that we've been talking about?
Well, I love that you're finding alternatives. I think talking about all the different types of cars that are out there is the most interesting part of what we're doing right now and what we're selling on BAT and what you guys are talking about on the podcast and your event, right, which I attended. The variety that's there is what makes it so cool. And if you had all 911s, all long hood 911s, that's all that was at your event still would have been cool, but it wouldn't have been nearly as cool as it was.
Right.
So I am a huge proponent of trying different stuff, trying a front engine car, trying a rear engine car, trying a mid engine car, trying a French car, even though my dad told me never go near a French car, right? I bought a French car. And like having crazy stuff like that is really what keeps it interesting. So you may say you may never sell that blue car, and that may be true. But if a better 911 came along or a different 911, or you just got tired of them for 2 years and then wanted to get out and then back in, I mean, there's different ways to skin that. And I love the list of cars you're talking about alternatives, but I don't even think that's close to the end of that list, right? There's so many cars.
It's endless. And I think that's one of the coolest things about, I'll do some live streaming sometimes and people will come into the chat and I'll hop over to Bring a Trailer and we'll just talk about cars. We'll just talk about cars that we see. Look at this, look at that. Oh, I didn't even know that existed. What the hell is that thing? And the diversity of it all is really, really awesome. One thing that you may not know, since we're not like best buds or anything, is that I've owned probably 75 to 100 cars. So I've had, and I know this is hard to believe.
People think I'm sick, man. I don't think my tally's that high, but people think
it's got to be. Don't lie to me. You've got to own a lot of cars.
I feel better now that you just said those sort of numbers. No, oh man, I've never tallied them, but I don't know. It's in 2 digits. I'm not near 3 digits, but I don't know, 20, 30, something 40. I don't know.
I can say that I've driven a Yugo GV and had as good of experience driving that as I would say a Ford Pinto, but that's kind of on the same shit tier level as like a C43 AMG that I've owned, that I road tripped. It's all about like, it's all about
the C43 crowd is so angry that you're having this conversation in the same breath, but I love that. I think that's great.
It doesn't matter. The car is just okay. It does matter. Okay. I'm not driving around in a Ford Edge, right? Obviously there has to be some sort of angle or martyrdom or whatever you want to call it to create the story, right? And there's a lot of cars that would do that. And then like like you said, pigeonholing yourself into one is a huge mistake when there's so much out there.
Well, even for you, dude. I mean, yeah, we don't know each other all that well, but like I love your like trooper content and mayhem in your garage and stuff. And then the Benz, obviously, that you brought it on the event and you customized and you did everything with the mechanicals of that and stuff. I mean, I'm into that more than I'm into your, 911 motor rebuild or the Overcrest version 1.0 Southwestern pics of that car and stuff. It's just the fact that you're into 2 or 3 or 4 like weirdly not related types of vehicles and beyond. Like you say, that the tally is high. That those sort of people and their ethos sort of appeal to me, which is why I've kind of grabbed onto Overcrest and think what you guys are doing is cool. And then those sort of events, right? Like I orient purchasing cars for the types of events they can take me on. And then your event that you built is kind of right in that wheelhouse.
So you still didn't answer my question, though. I think you navigated around
Which is what?
Is the 911 overpriced?
Some of them are money that I wouldn't spend on a 911. But man, look at what sticker is on a new 911, right? Like that's something from when we were kids. You're like,
which drove which though? Which drove which?
But wait. I mean, you're like, what's a 911? I don't know. What ought a 911 be? I don't know, 70 grand. And you go and you hear these stories, or you go to the showroom at some dealer, and it's like 140 grand for like a 911 highly optioned, but it's kind of a normal 911. It's not like a crazy limited edition or something. And you're like,
the valet doesn't even look twice at that car when you show up. Your $150,000 car. It doesn't even look twice.
Or dude, if you want to blow your brains out, like a new Escalade is like 150 grand or something like that, right? And you're just like, what world are we living in, right? So you start to get down these trails of like, is it overpriced? It starts to be like, man, I don't know. The world is overpriced. It seems like, right? And there's a lot of work you have to do, or a lot of turning your own wrenches in your garage if you want to, play with these higher end branded cars in your own garage and do your own thing. Or people get creative, like they also do on your event, right? With 944s and 924s and stuff that you can actually get your hands on a little bit easier. But are they overpriced, dude? I don't know. A 911R, the new one, when it came out, and they said that was gonna be 450 grand. The first thing I was like, okay, that's bananas. I'm nowhere. I'm not ever gonna touch one of those cars, but I think they're cool. Are they overpriced? I don't know. To some people, I guess they're not, because people keep paying that sort of money. But
I just look at it in the context of like, they made 400,000 of these cars, but they're still some of the most, in terms of attainable collector cars. You look at the 2002, the Alfa Romeo GTV, you look at maybe a Giulia, you look at the 911, and you have like all these cars that are kind of in like the 70s cool, right? You put them in this box. These are all the kind of the cool. You go to vintage racing, these are the cars you see. And maybe an E-Type, just all the, or a Datsun 510, which is amazing what those things are going for now. But all these cars, you put them in a box, but for some reason, the 911 is like, it's here. It's way more expensive than everything else. And I don't know, we talked a lot about why that could be. I mean, the internet feedback loop, the Magnus Walker effect, the Bringer trailer effect. And I think Bringer trailer has had a huge effect on the availability of making things available to people. So there's all these different things, but is the 911 really $150,000 a car and a GTV is 60? Is the driving experience $100,000 better than a 2002 or a GTV?
It's crazy. And personally, I don't think it is, right? Or else my garage would be full of a bunch of 911s, and it's not.
Right.
And so I've had 3 of them. I had a 68 911 that was a sort of hot rod car with a later 3.2 in it, which was really fun. A lot of this was on BAT, and these were all sold on BAT. I had a 72 T, and then I had a 88 Carrera, G50 Carrera, really nice car. All of those have now gone through BAT, a couple of them multiple times.
Did you know I sold a car on BAT?
Super cool cars.
Did you know I've sold one?
Which one? No, you're secretive. Which one?
A 1983 Ford Escort GL. Baby blue.
I love that.
Baby blue.
I remember that car.
That was mine.
The best 83 GL in the world, right?
In the world.
The only one left.
Hands down, the cleanest one ever. That thing's going to be on a movie set somewhere. Sorry.
And did you get any money for it? 8 grand, 10 grand?
I think I got like $6,500.
Okay, that's fair. You got to take that and run.
It was, I got it as a bundle with a 73 Ford Pinto Squire wagon that I bought. It was gold. It was a gold one with a wood paneling. I got hey, do you also want this Escort? I'm like, not really, but sure. And it was like super cheap, so I just kind of went with the thing. But that's my Bring a Trailer experience.
I love that. Hopefully that worked out.
It did.
But yeah. So anyway, are they over? People have these debates all the time, and I don't think 911s are a screaming deal, but I don't think, I think the market sets the price, unfortunately, and it's like, has that gone up since we started, turning over rocks and posting 911s on BAT in 07, 08, 09? I posted a few 912s like out of outrage because they were over 10 grand. I was angry about it. I was like, who's driving the prices up on 912s? Blah,
Believe
blah,
it or
blah.
not, I went back and I read that. I went to Internet Wayback Machine, and
You
that
remember
post
that?
that you're talking about is January of 2007. And then there's another one, and I copy pasted it right here.
Dude, you're a psycho. You're on the post I'm talking about. You're
I
as
was.
crazy as me for remembering
100%.
that I wrote that.
100%.
Okay.
So this is right after that post, actually. It says, last summer, it seemed like $8,000 would buy you a pretty nice little Alfa Romeo GTV. When did they start routinely hitting 20 grand? These are starting to make whacked BMW 2002 TII restorers charging 16 grand look like lightweights. Better get while the getting's good, or we'll all end up driving Datsun 510s and looking for a bargain for Cortina Mark IIs and Square Taillight 2002s.
That's a pretty good line, isn't it?
It
I was
is.
on point.
You
I was
were.
on point.
For sure. And it's interesting looking at Bring a Trailer back then. This is kind of a good segue. So it was really hard in the 2000s, even into the teens. It was hard to find cars. It was difficult to find cars to buy. It was a pain in the ass. You had to use Search Tempest, or you had to type in all the cities in Craigslist and have 76,000 tabs open, and Facebook Marketplace didn't even exist. And then you were looking at Auto Trader and nothing was there. It all sucked. And then there's all these other websites. And then you're like, well, I would just like fly somewhere and then go to the place and pull the thing out of the slot and look at it. It was so hard to buy cars. And then this blog comes along, and I remember this back then. I mean, wow, this guy's kind of like doing the work for me, right? He's like collating, look at all these cool cars, and be like, you'd make a post, and then it would be like 20 cars that are cool from Craigslist or whatever it is. I'm like, man, this is rad. This is really rad. And then I could just go click them all and show my buddies, and made the whole process like way easier. What was the original intent when you started that blog? Like, what were you thinking? Was it just kind of for fun, or were you trying to make it easier for people? What were you thinking back then?
Well, I was the guy. It's hilarious that you key in on some of those early stories. It's really kind of gut wrenching to have your own words be read back to you 15 years later. It's like having your high school papers read back to you, and you're like, "Oh my gosh,
don't do that to me."
I'm sorry to the world. I'm so sorry. Anyway, but that one you read is pretty funny, and I kind of still hold those beliefs, other than the dollar values that have all changed. But what started it was, I was sending out links to all my buddies, like what you were doing, and like what it turns out a lot of people were doing. And for whatever reason, I didn't, to unwind at the end of the day, I didn't watch TV or do anything like that. I would jump online and I would hunt for cars. And I'd always done that even in the pre-internet era. When I was a little kid, I'd read the classifieds that showed up in the San Jose Mercury News every Sunday, and I'd like look for people's cars. I didn't have any money, but there was a Shelby for sale in San Jose. That's amazing. That was the coolest thing that happened to me that day, was to discover that. So I kept doing that, and it became sort of a therapeutic thing for me. The center pages of Auto Week, it was one of the only magazines that they would actually like list classifieds in, right? Other than maybe Hemmings or something like that. So I'd ride my bike to Barnes and Noble, and I'd go to the, not pay for any magazines, but I'd go like read all the listings, right? I don't know. It's just a weird sort of corner of my psyche and what makes me get excited about stuff. And
it was cool. Those books that you're talking about, you page through them and it would be like 99% shit. But then there'd be like, I don't know.
Nugget.
There's a nugget in there.
There's one win.
It'd be like a 280Z, like right. Oh, and it'd be this one. It'd be lime green, and it'd be right in the middle, and all the other cars were just junk. It was like Caprices, and it was just all trash. And then there'd be that one car, and it was worth getting excited over.
And I got fast, right? Because of that 99-1 rule, you'd get fast. I'd like scan down. I'd be, okay, Porsche section, right? Or, okay, over here to the Mustang section or whatever, right? And I'd be totally into that. And then internet comes along, and it's all scattered and terrible and all over the place and difficult to navigate from, call it 1998 until, I don't know, 05. It's just like, it's eBay and it's these crummy websites. And yeah, you mentioned a couple sort of search hacks, but they're all a nightmare. And so anyway, I just kind of fought my way through it. But any given day, I'd be like, man, these are a couple, 3, 4 cars that if I had any dough, I would buy them. So I would send them to friends of mine that did have some money, right? I'd be like, dude, you probably ought to buy this. And they'd be like, yeah, whatever. Randy's spamming me again with like terrible ideas, right? And I'm like, okay. And so I close my laptop and delete all that work. And then I do it all over again the next night, right? I'd go hunting around. And if I searched alphas yesterday, I'd search, whatever, some other car today. And
What's
so I got
Randy's
to find
life
all
like
this
at
stuff.
this time? You're coming home. Where are you coming home from? What are you driving home in? Give me a picture.
I love that. Yeah. So this is pre-BAT. BAT was 07. So call this 2000 to 2005. I graduated college in 2000. And then I worked for BMW straight out of school. I was all about cars and wanted to do cars ever since I was a little kid. So I got very fortunate, got engineering jobs at BMW out of college. I'm living in the Bay Area, 2000, 2001, 2, 3.
I lived in the Bay Area then too.
Is that right?
I did. I lived up on Bush Street, 1153 Bush Street, up on by the hospital, right across the street from Pete Stout, and I didn't even know it.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. So in the city, man, you and I can start naming like cars that would be parked on the street in the city and different things in your neighborhood and my neighborhood. So I moved to the city in 2002 to chase down a girl who's now my wife, and the car scene in the city was actually interesting. Then I'm wondering if you and I like veered off of, different events that were going on, but it wasn't until you mentioned Stout in 06. He and I went on a rally together at one of these low buck San Francisco rallies. It cost, $350 for 2 days of rallying. We kind of got into the vintage car scene in San Francisco. And so I was driving. What the heck was I driving back then? I bought a 356 in San Francisco out in the avenues off Craigslist for 14 grand in 2004. That was a milestone car. I had an FJ60 that I battled parking it in the city as long as I could until I gave up and I sold that thing.
How did BMW feel about you not driving around in BMW? Anybody care?
Well, what I was going to say is those are my fun old cars. I'm super spoiled in that I had a field job where I drove around the Bay Area in California. So I had typically 3 Series and sometimes more interesting cars than that I got to drive working for BMW. That was sort of the middle of my tenure at BMW. And you have to build up some years before you get the 7s and the X5s and the fancy stuff. So I was mostly driving cars that were cool and brand new, 3 Series wagons and some pretty fun stuff. I was pretty deep BMW guy at that time. Minis were being released, so we got to have some fun in minis and stuff like that. But yeah, I drove that stuff. And then I had basically a 1-car garage that I could have.
Hold on a sec. Sorry. Thought just occurred to me. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to interrupt.
I love it.
BMW at that time. Okay. Can you imagine BMW? You work for them. You're driving. You're in a 4.6 IS or whatever. What is a 4.6 or 4.8 IS? You're in this thing. It's basically an M5 SUV, but it's not ostentatious. It doesn't have a badge on it, but it's still pretty cool. The E39 M5 is there. The Mini's coming out. Wow, that's a cool brand to bring back. Could you have ever thought, working at BMW at that time, that the trajectory would be where we are now? Like, holy shit, man. It has been a wild trip through Bengal and all this other stuff to be where we are today.
We were on the mountaintop. I mean, Bengal was a presence, right? I mean, the 7 Series came out in 02, and it was like an atom bomb. But, I think that era that I was there, 2000 to 2010, the cars were so cool. We were genuinely stoked on the next version of 3 Series and 5 Series and different stuff that was coming out. And then there were a couple weird curveballs, right? E60 headlights were like, wait a minute. And new 7 Series was like, wait a minute. What's happening? There was some weird stuff, but the M Coupe was being currently produced at that time.
Yeah.
Every M3 that came out was still super cool and a big deal when you got your hands on one of those. And I just love the brand, right? I interned there in college and I was just all about it. I was so pumped. And now, there's so much rage about BMW now. And a lot of the BMWs driving down the freeway, I can't really tell. People ask me about BMW models and I'm like, I don't know, dude. There's like a million of them. I don't know.
This SUV has the badge on it, like the M1. So must be pretty good or whatever that thing is. Was there did you notice any weird culture stuff happen? Because that's like right then. 03, 04, kind of that period of time is when things went. We went from the ultimate driving machine to, I don't even know.
Yeah, I think that was an interesting inflection point of small car company with a lot of the old players that were running it, to those people were retiring or heading for the door, and a lot of new blood and a new climbers inside the company that were going to make the company make a bunch of dough. I mean, it makes it. I don't particularly care for the cars these days, but the company makes a lot of money,
Yeah, they do.
right? And I think I don't follow it, but I think more than they did in 01, 02, 03, right? I mean, I think they're growing and they're selling a lot of vehicles,
The romantic in me doesn't
and
care.
yeah, honestly, but man, I was there, and I would have trouble working at a company where I don't care about the product. So I think regardless, like the BAT thing is such a Cinderella story, and I feel so fortunate the way it's worked out. But I don't think I could have had a 40-year career at BMW that I'd be halfway through right now if I had stayed, just because the product stuff, I'd just be like, oh man, what are we doing? Where are we going? How's this going to work? So anyway, it was an amazing era. The cars that were coming out and getting to see stuff behind the scenes and work on all that and have a lot of people around me at the company. You ask about culture. There were awesome people at the company that were super fired up on it, both in Germany and America, in my experiences. And
So wild.
what
So
what a
wild.
time to have been there. What a time.
Yeah, I mean that was the end of, I guess if you look at like 03, 04, 02, you look at 1980. I guess if you take the E24, you can go even farther back, but that whole span of time was, in terms of what a manufacturer did in the cars that they built, it was the best period of a time for a manufacturer, of any manufacturer of all time, I think.
You think? Oh, that's a bold claim. That's a bold claim.
Think of all the cars.
But,
think of all the cars.
Yeah.
E28, the M5, the M6, the M3, the different versions of the M5, the M Coupe, the E30 M3, and what it did in racing, and it's just like stomped on everybody and just ruined Mercedes' day at the I mean, it's just all that's like everything they did during that period of time was good. Like, you can look at the 911 and go, wow, the 911 as a model of a car, its breadth was like really serious, and what it did with motorsport is insane. But as like a whole brand, what else held like a cohesive ultimate driving machine, a cohesive message for that long and really succeeded at it? Is there anything?
Yeah. No, I mean, there were bright spots in different sorts of companies for 5 and 10 years, but yeah, BMW had it for a long time. And I like Benz. I'm a huge Benz fan, and there were some really cool cars that came about. But yeah, you talk about the breadth of the whole line, and particularly in motorsport and different sorts of things happening. Yeah, BMW's. I mean, I'm telling you, man, we were there and it was top of the world. And the cars, you knew when it was released, it was going to be awesome.
It must have been cool to like go somewhere and be like, yeah, I work for BMW. I mean, that must have felt like good back then, you know?
Yes, absolutely. I was very proud of it, and I was psyched that I could have a job there, and there was good work to be done. There's honest. You could be honest about telling people you believed in the product, which is really cool. So anyway, it was certainly fantastic, and yeah, the cars I got to have my hands on and drive were really formative.
Okay, so 356. You're driving around a 356. You're writing blogs at night. Yep. What is the inception point of, when does the light bulb go off? Like, are you watching stats? Are you seeing like, wow, there's a lot of people reading this shit? Was there a moment?
It took a while.
And
man.
what were you drinking?
We turned it on heavily. Yeah, different sorts of stuff. We turned it on in Jan 07, but it was like talking into a microphone that was turned off, is what I always say, right? I mean, there was nobody listening. My dad would like text me, or he would like leave a comment, right? And I'd be like, oh, appreciate that. One comment on that story, or a couple buddies or whatever. But you look back, you said you were digging around. You don't have to go to the Internet Time Machine. I mean, all the BAT stuff is permanent. All that stuff is still there on the site, which I think is really important. And it's all there. And you can go back and page back to 2007, and there's endless stories with zero comments, which today in the Instagram, I mean, there was no Instagram, right? It's so, it's so obvious that you should at least get something, you should get a thumbs up from somebody, even if it's like,
and you kept going.
I just kept going.
Yelling into the alley.
I just kept going, screaming. And sometimes that one you read sounds like I was a real screamer, but mostly I was just positive. I was like, a lot of the stories I ended with, somebody should buy this car. Somebody should buy this car because I'm not buying it, and somebody should buy this car. And people loved that. And then the variety, you talk about different marks, right? Like I think back then it was very novel that somebody would give a Datsun 240Z any airtime. It was kind of, back then it felt a little bit like a rich guy car magazine world, or Top Gear or whatever was kind of ramping up. It was like, oh, the latest whatever Ferrari, blah, 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 or it was very Pebble Beachy, or it was, car clubs or whatever, stuff that felt a little exclusive. And BAT felt super approachable and like, wow, why is Randy writing, about a rusty Fiat today? Right. And I was like, because this is a significant Fiat that's in a garage in Topeka. You ought to go look at this thing.
Right.
Right. And that sort of energy around cheap stuff, and trucks and cars and French and German and American and blah blah blah. I think that resonated with people's desire for that variety. So anyway, yeah, the light bulb didn't go off for, I'd say, a year and a half later. We started to get enough audience and traction that a couple people said, "Hey, man, you featured a car I had on Craigslist, and I got like 10 calls in 5 minutes. So can I just skip that step of begging you to list my Craigslist car? Can I just send you the car and you list it?"
Do you remember what that car was? Was there a car? Was there one?
Oh,
What's the first auction?
It was a little bit. The first auctions I definitely know, but this is way pre-auction. This
Okay.
is like 2009. Auctions came on in 2014. I mean, we
Okay.
went for like five years. This is the long road, dude. I mean, I'm not the overnight success that a lot of people think we are. Like it was a long road, and that amount of time, I mean, it was a gradual, like, oh, people are starting to reach out or emailing bringatrailer@gmail.com, which is Randy, right? And it's just like all this stuff that seems so hokey now, but it was necessary to just sort of inch our way into commerce from just Randy hunting for cars and do that in a way that people would trust at all, instead of just like turning on a marketplace and saying, "We're the best, list your car here."
Because technically you have no authority whatsoever to anybody at this time.
Nothing. But then people would read and be like, "Whoa, this guy's been writing this for 6 months or a year.
What a weirdo!
What a loser!" Yeah, totally. So people would check in and be like, "What is this guy's deal?"
Yeah.
Depending on when they discovered it, and then they'd read it, and then it'd be like, "Oh, I resonate with that," and then they'd leave some comment. And then we started to get some comment flow, which back then is the blog world, dude. There was no Facebook, there was no all the stuff that has trained all our youth to like leave snappy one-liner comments and emojis and stuff. None of that even exists, right? I'm such a dinosaur. We turned it on a long time ago, so that stuff sprung up as we were launching or after. So that all had to kind of happen in parallel. So anyway, I don't remember what the first car we did, but we did basically a classified service, and I didn't even charge anybody. If your car sold, we asked that you'd please send us a check for $150.
Yeah.
And some people ghosted us and hosed us, right? Because it was all a handshake deal.
Yep.
And some people, all of a sudden, my wife.
Do you have a little blacklist? You have like this?
Oh, total. Oh, dude, there's always a blacklist. There's always a blacklist, as you know. But basically just because of behavior like that, right? Like if you like hosed us in our early days, you're sort of famous.
Are they still on the blacklist?
No, I mean, we've laxed up. There's not as much pressure these days, and that was 15 years ago, right? I mean, so you gotta move on a little bit. But there's some people that figure out some egregious behavior. I don't know where it comes from, but we focus on more positive things. Yeah, so we listed a few cars, and my wife said, "Hey, there's starting to be some checks in the mailbox. Like what's going on? Like what's happening?
What are you
and
doing?"
I was like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, on my laptop, we're selling some cars on Bring a Trailer. It's starting to happen." So we said, maybe we ought to sort of formalize that and actually manage it in a Google Doc instead of in your email, Randy. And then it got a little better, little by little.
Okay, so when did you need help? Like, when was it like, oh my God, it's like it's in like a cartoon where you open the mailbox and the mail just comes like shooting out of it, or like Harry Potter when the mail slot opens and all the letters come in. It was there. When were you like, oh shit, I need help? Like, I need to hire somebody.
That happened in a couple different ways. We were like, can I keep enough vehicles on the site, or is it better to have? I was trying to do one a day for the first year or two, and I would fail at that every once in a while. But there was this pressure after 6 or 12 months. If I didn't write something in the day, the morning BAT email wouldn't go out, and the email was like a thing. It became like an addiction for me. It was like the Groupon email for free skydiving or whatever in the morning. Like people would open it up and see if there was their dream car on BAT's email.
Yep.
And so if I didn't write, I had a crazy day at work. Like I had a full-time job and whatever. We started having kids. I went to a night school program. Like I'm doing all this stuff. There would be a day where I just dropped it. I'm like, it's midnight. I got to go to bed. I can't like go hunting for a car to write. And that email wouldn't go out. And then I'd get 20 angry emails about the email's broken, like it didn't come to me today, what's going on, all the madness, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, like these people really want this. So we tried to figure out help wise if anybody else could help write stories about cars, and we struggled because nobody would write it in the same way, and it was a very personalized thing, and like how do we do that? So we're like, shoot, finding writers isn't going to do it, but maybe like organization for Randy. Organization has never been my strong suit. Everybody at BAT would tell you that. And so like, how can I, like, I've got 1,000 messages in my email and people are sending us cars and tips. The cool part was people started to send us tips, right? If I was actually a car dealer with money, this would have been the greatest scheme in the history of mankind, because people started to be BAT for me, right? They started to send it all to me. And I was like, whoa, I'm like the clearinghouse. I get first dibs on all these cars. This is crazy.
For sure.
So, but I didn't have any dough and I was busy and doing all that other stuff. So I was like, okay, we're going to try to pare down this email inbox. And we made it this automated system. I started the whole thing with a buddy of mine. It's not the Randy show. It's always been the Randy and my buddy Gentry. We started it and he was like tech minded because I'm not too deep in that world. And so he helped build tools around, okay, you're getting 150 emails every day with interesting cars. Those all auto forward into this little like parsing, mechanism, and it cuts out the worst half of them, and it starts to like auto write the first, the ones that you check on it or whatever. We just like mechanized it because it was starting to be insane volume. And then human wise, we added I think our first couple employees in 2009, 10. Started to add, they were just contract helpers, and then a real employee that helped us build the auction was in 2012. So anyway, more than you wanted to know.
No, it's super interesting. I'm always interested in stuff like this, and it's this whole like arch and this whole journey for you over, I guess, what is it? It's
16 years
16
so far.
Years. Okay, 16 years. Most people, I'm going to wager, especially in California, especially in the Bay Area, would have sold out a long time ago. You are still there, which proves to me that how passionate you are about what you do. You truly love cars, and I think that's evident by, the history that you've had in terms of where the website started. But my question is how do you stay fresh? How do you not get burnt out? Like, I mean, it's every day for years and years and years. And before it was like you had a job and you were doing this. How do you stay fresh and still want to be excited about this business that you created? And instead of like buying a yacht, like you could sell out, buy a yacht and be done, but you're not.
Yeah, I'm sticking around, and we've sold some of it, which has been nice because I needed an insurance policy because I was going crazy with it, with the ups and downs and the risk of holding all our eggs in one basket.
Sure,
but that's another story too. But yeah, we lasted 13 years before we even did that, and yeah, part of it is there's always new stuff going on. There's a long list of both cars and car events that I haven't even gotten to do yet, right? And so that keeping it fresh for me, like I'm super excited this year. I'm like mapping out the year of the cool things I get to do. I mapped out last year in a similar way, right? And your event, I was a total first timer on that event, and seeing new territory, taking a car that you're not sure is going to make it. I mean, all the good take the car ethos, right? And it just that keeps me fired up now. Yeah, an email inbox with 3,000 demands from people and the kind of things that a lot of people have in their corporate life, and sometimes I can have if I let it get out of control, is not super fun. But we have a ton of people working on the team now, so I've over the years have learned to trust other people with what was originally sort of my baby.
How do you do that? How do you reach that point? How do you, with Overcrest, Overcrest started, I was like, I think I should start a podcast. And it's grown into bringing on Jeff on, who does all our branding and direction with that stuff. And then Jake, came on really early, but I still like, it's like there's trust issues all the time. How do you deal with that as an entrepreneur, like letting go and how do you expect people to do what you think you want them to do, but then they don't do it? And then how do you deal with that? And it's like got to be such a tough juggling act when it's your thing.
Well, that's hard. I mean, you're talking about your thing too. I mean, I think every business founder and then even business owner, they wrestle with that, but finding trustworthy people is tricky, but being very frank and honest about what your shortcomings are and where you could have other people help. I mentioned like organization for me and just thoughtfulness around building tools and that sort of stuff. Like I'm the guy who thinks I can just pedal my bike faster and solve all the problems, right? And that worked for a while, right? And no joke. I mean, I was famous amongst my friends that like we'd go to whatever, some vacation at some house somewhere or whatever, and everybody'd go to bed and Randy'd open his laptop when everybody went to sleep and he'd look for cars and he'd write on Bring a Trailer until 3 a.m. and then do it all again the next day. And I was like the psychopath that was up in the all weird hours of the night looking for cars and on my laptop. And for a lot of people, that's like a very toxic way to go through life. But I was trying to build this like side hustle business. And so it necessitated that of me. And that was the way I structured it. And it's kind of my own fault and my own journey, but it worked. But eventually that's not going to fly. And I knew that. And I needed to find some folks. And a lot of it, I won't say I'm some sort of brilliant, cultivator of talent or sourcer of talent, but I was able to find the right folks to help us contribute. A couple of the early hires were my co-founder found, and we just found some folks that could really help us stand this thing up and operationalize it, because it started to be a treadmill type of a system, right? Like the faster you can go, the more business you can do.
Right.
Those businesses start to, if they're limited to one person, you're doing it wrong.
There's a bandwidth problem.
I knew that I needed to not just, have a 36-hour day to solve the problems. I needed to find other people that had more bandwidth. So man, what a roller coaster, but it worked out.
So there's a thing with Bring a Trailer, and I'm going to hit you with this. And I wonder if the old you that started Bring a Trailer, if Bring a Trailer existed when you were looking at cars then, would you go, fuck, man, there's no deals anymore. Just do it on Bring a Trailers. Everything's there. It's the prices are this. Like I go on Craigslist. I look at an E39 540. The guy thinks it's worth $50,000 because you know what I'm saying? Like, would the
say it, dude? You can shoot the arrows at me. You can say because of Randy that M5
because of
Randy.
Okay,
I get that. I get that all the time, but I'm ready for that.
But I'm posing it as you, the Randy that was looking for deals all the time, writing a blog about deals called Bring a Trailer. Would Bring a Trailer Randy of 2007 not like Bring a Trailer of Randy of now? You know what I'm saying? Like
the person,
not the person, not the person, but just like what was created, the monster that you've created.
Yep. I know. I'm with you. I get all flavors of this, and we hear BAT blamed for prices are high because of Bring a Trailer and that sort of stuff. So there's a bunch of layers to this, and a lot of it is like my identity. So I go through this a lot.
I'm trying to make it a little more of a unique approach for you, so it's not.
I appreciate that. Well, I also go on podcasts and people just sort of blow sunshine the whole time. They're like, BAT is so wonderful.
Hold on a sec. I got a browser prevented recording error.
I love all this. I heard the question. No.
Okay. Would the Randy of 2007 be upset with the monster that new Randy has created?
I think there's still a lot of cars that are out there. First of all, I think a lot of people look at BAT and say all the work is done. And I don't think we're even scratching the surface. Like the crazy part about BAT is we have so many cars now. But what has been eye-opening for us over the years is how many are out there. Like I'll go to some place and a guy will be like, oh yeah, I just picked this up. And I was like, what do you mean you just picked this up? Like I sometimes feel like I have the right to have seen it online somewhere, but I don't have that right. And B, stuff comes out of the woodwork. Like I love looking at auction catalogs and all these cars that are coming out of the woodwork. And I'm like, where on earth did that come from? And so I think it's not an infinite supply, but I think there's a massive supply of interesting vehicles. Now you can say what you want about like, is more visibility, are prices higher? I think the pool of buyers is more confident to buy online now, and that means prices will be higher. I also think there's just like time is marching on. It's not 2007 anymore in the housing market either, right? I mean, So some things are changing. But what I think often about, like, what would I have spent all my time on if I wasn't like hunting around on the internet and I could have just gone to BAT? Like I think a lot of people do now. They kind of start at BAT, and if they want to go deeper, they'll go all over the place, which is great. And I encourage people to do that. But I think that I think I kind of would have liked the ease of BAT, but I probably would have had a similar, maybe a little chip on my shoulder, like some people do, and they're like, "Well, I don't need BAT. That's like the easy. That's like the easy way to source them. I'm going to go make life hard for myself, and I'm going to go to, go to the Alpha Forum again, like I used to do, and make me want to, blow my brains out for the interface of searching through listings for sale, that sort of stuff. So I think all that stuff still exists, and there's some stuff that's hiding out there, but we have certainly mainstreamed availability for it to make it easier on folks, but not all the cars are on BAT.
Like, we talked a little while ago about how hard it was to find cars, how hard it was. And I think it's what you've done.
To find good cars. I think it was super easy to find cars unfortunately, yes. But they were so terrible, or the seller was so terrible.
Yeah. Dude, how much, weird tangent, how much do you think you can make a year just vacuuming cars that were for sale on Craigslist? You just buy a car on Craigslist, vacuum it out, run it through the wash, and sell it again. Extra $500 almost every single time. I feel like it's just like, come on, man. There's so much trash out there. But I think I think Bring a Trailer is, I think it's a double-edged sword. I think it has increased the prices, but that is a result of making more available to more people. So you have to choose on what's important. And for me, the entire goal of Overcrest is to encourage people to use the car as the tool for exploration. And if Bring a Trailer is helping people do that, I'm in your boat, man. I'm there. I'm with you 100%. Seems like people that maybe wouldn't even ever bought cars because it was too much of a pain in the ass, or there was shitty cars, or was scams or whatever, which still exist on Craigslist and Facebook, by the way. That's a whole another story. But they can trust you. It's great. And I think you've done a great thing and provided a great service to people that have access to great stuff and great tools to experience great things with great people.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's not all perfect. And I just appreciate people that are honest about it. And they're like, I think this, like, let's dialogue about it. That's what BAT's also always been about. It's like an open dialogue about the car where you're respectful. You don't end up hating each other at the end of the dialogue, but you can understand that there's multiple points of view, right? Like, not everybody likes a Lancia Fulvia, right? Yeah. Like, and that's okay. Yeah. They don't all have to like them, right?
What's wrong with the Lancia Fulvia? I've driven one of those. They're great.
I think they're fantastic. We just had one. Oh, man, we've had some crazy stuff, and we could get into that too. We just had one with a Subaru Boxer swap into a Fulvia, which is total sacrilege, and yet probably the fastest Fulvia there's ever been. But
that doesn't take much.
That's true. So anyway, but those sort of cars, like, I still love. You ask also what keeps me going. Like, I still love logging into BAT every single day and seeing all the cars that are there, because I'm looking out the window in San Francisco now. If the streets were lined with BAT inventory all up and down, I would be so thrilled for the interest and the variety and the cool factor for all the cars, instead of a bunch of CRVs and Foresters or whatever that I'm looking at outside that are everywhere. And they're all painted gray now, right? Yeah. All that sort of phenomenon of what modern cars have become. I just love the fact that people are fired up to buy some of these and hopefully, go drive them down the road. And not only they get the enjoyment of the behind the wheel moment, but people, sitting on the sidewalk see this crazy thing drive down the street. I mean, that probably, I would hope, gives some joy to all sorts of folks. It also gives some rage to other folks, but your event blazing through some little town, like, brings joy to people when they saw our crazy cars go by. And
I always pick small towns on purpose, positive. Man. I pick small towns on purpose. Like, there was like the previous rally was in Utah, and we went to this place called the Swingin' Steak, which is this great little spot where a legitimate cowboy, not a fake cowboy like I would be if I showed up and tried to do this. Legitimate cowboy has a grill that swings back and forth over a fire, and right here the dude is cooking buns and bread in John Wayne's oven. Right there. That's the dude. And he just all night was just cooking steaks. And afterward he told me, he's like, you have no idea how amazing this was, because it was right during COVID, right after COVID, when everybody was like, I think we can play outside. It was like, he's like, you legitimately have saved our business. The amount of, like, we brought a ton of money in there. And then the next year we went to this little town called Chalice in Idaho. You were there. We went to the Y Inn, and that lady the next morning, like, she gave me the biggest hug. Thank you so much. We loved having you here. This was the best. You did a good thing for this town. And I tell you what, man, that is some of the best vibe feeling I've ever gotten. I
Yeah,
love
you should be proud of that.
small
You should be so
town
proud of
America,
that.
man. Small town America is absolutely incredible, and there's no better tool to get to the small town than the car.
So yeah, so BAT has its ups and downs, I guess is the short answer, but there is a good thread to getting people in interesting cars, making that more accessible. Certainly all the, scammy smarminess of the internet that they can avoid most of by doing it on BAT, and just some inspiration, right? I'm looking at an Alpha race car on BAT today. That's amazing. And
I saw that thing.
am I going to buy it? Probably not, almost certainly not. But am I fired up to have read that and looked at pictures of it at Laguna Seca in 71 this morning, like over my breakfast? It was the best part of my day, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. So that sort of stuff is super cool.
Dude, it's been my pleasure to have you on. I hope you come out to the rally next year. It shouldn't be too difficult for you to get there. I think it'll be just fine.
Interesting teaser.
I think
Interesting teaser.
Shouldn't be too hard, depending on what you drive. I think you'll be all right. Anyway, dude, thanks so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate you spending time and sharing all that wisdom and the stories. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, take care, buddy.